You guys, a thunderstorm has just started up right as I'm starting to record. I hope the power doesn't go out. Sorry. And Chibi, she's all uptight and anxious. She doesn't want to be held when she's scared of. She used to not be scared of them, but she's going to be pacing, I think, throughout much of this review. Okay. The Blackening. Tonight I attended an advanced screening, and by advanced screening, it's advanced by about a month. It is slated to be released on, well, exactly a month from today, which at the time of this filming is May 16th. It's supposed to be released June 16th. It is directed by the guy who made the Shaft 2019 movie, Tim... I can't remember his last. Anyway, whatever. It was directed by him. And I remember I really enjoyed the Shaft movie. I didn't know that it was made by him when I went into it. All I knew was I saw the poster, I saw portions of the trailer, and it looked hilarious to me. They showed the trailer. I think it was during... It's like, I didn't watch it here on YouTube. It was like in the movie theater. And it looked really funny. And it looked like it was going to be something that was going to tackle all these stereotypes, not only horror stereotypes and tropes and things like that, but also Black stereotypes. And that's exactly what this movie does. And it was a crowded theater. I don't think it was... They had said that all the passes had been claimed, but it didn't look like it was entirely full, but it was... There were a lot of people there. I don't think there were many empty seats, let's just say. It was a very lively crowd. It was a mixed group of people. And I have to say that I knew when a reference was made that I had no idea what was so funny because, well, like, let's say there would be... You had a bunch of white people and you had a bunch of black people, and there would be things that the black people would specifically laugh at that I think went over the heads of many of the other people who were there that weren't black. Just different, I guess, cultural references that I had, like, something would happen and there would be all this laughter, and I was like, well, I don't understand what was funny about that, but that's just because it was touching on something that most of the rest of them knew exactly what it was about, and I didn't. But that wasn't something that was an impediment to enjoying the horror or the comedy elements of this film. It's honestly more of a... It feels more of a comedy. There's certainly some horror elements in it, but in a lot of ways it feels kind of slapsticky. So I never really felt like there was this overwhelming or looming danger that was happening, even though it really was. It's kind of hard to explain. It was very comedic, and it was comedic at times where in a normal horror movie, there would be no comedy. The audience, like I said, was very engaged. Like, we had people outright yelling at the screen when the characters would do something that was typically stupid actions that a character will do in a horror movie. Like, let's say, well, maybe even more so, but there's a scene where there's the bad person is going around in the house and the other people are hiding and they're having this argument in a loud whispery tone, and someone in the audience was like, shut up, stop talking. And it's that kind of thing. It's like, why are you making so much noise? Now, I feel like in an actual horror story, people wouldn't be making as much noise as the characters in here were making, but this was a comedy. And so you can kind of overlook that to an extent because it's not supposed to take itself that seriously as a horror. So when they do things that are ridiculous and crazy, you can laugh at it because you're supposed to be laughing at it, if that makes any sense. So I have sort of a bunch of muddled thoughts, and I didn't use my phone when I was in the theater because it was an advanced screening. It was put on by Lionsgate. Sometimes they don't want you to use your phone at all, like just because they don't want anybody, taking pictures or whatever. So I was writing in the dark on a notepad. That was awful. I mean, at least my notes were legible, but it was annoying because I felt like I was a little bit hampered as to the things that I wanted to write down as they occurred to me. So like I said, my thoughts were muddled, and I was just like, there were some things I was thinking about. And as a whole, I did enjoy this movie. I had frustrations with not getting some of the comedy, but that's not the fault of the movie. This movie, while it is about Black people and Black horror comedy or whatever, it's not only aimed at Black people. It's something that everybody can enjoy, but some people will probably enjoy it more than others because they'll just get some of the stuff that's being referenced. So I certainly don't consider this a waste of time. I was going to buy a ticket to see this because it's on my watch list for Cinemark. They just don't have the tickets available yet. So when I saw there was this opportunity to watch the advanced screening, I was like, okay, I'll do it. This is one of those advanced screenings where first come, first seated. And I was like the first person to show up. I was 2 hours ahead of time because I was like, I didn't know there's going to be this long crowd. I remember going to an advanced screening in Harry Potter and the crowds were all the way around the side of the building. So anyway, there was no issue at all getting in. I was glad I was able to watch this. It starts off with a it sets the tone with this text. When it first starts off, it says something like, this story is based on true events that never happened. So I thought that was fun. I was like, okay, you know how they kind of play with the whole, this is based on true events. And then it's probably true events that have been highly fictionalized. So I thought it was funny that they kind of addressed that sort of, trope about horror. What else? Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I forgot to start off with the premise. I just kind of hit the ground running with this. The premise of the movie is, if you have not seen the trailer, this group of Black friends go to this cabin in the woods to celebrate Juneteenth. And there's a killer. And they have to, the guy, this was actually, I didn't find this out till I got home and I was just looking up more stuff about it. This was actually a full-length movie of a short film that came out in 2018 or something like that. Wow. That rain is really loud. And there's a lot of the same sort of stuff that happens in the full-length film that they showed in the little, 4 or 5 minute sketch or whatever. And so one of the writers of that, he was also involved in writing this, and he also played one of the characters. Oh gosh, his name is Dwayne Perkins. I'll try to remember to point him out when he comes around again. So he was involved in writing that guy right there to the right. So that's kind of cool. He made this little short film, or he wrote this short film, and then he was involved in production of the full-length film. Kind of reminds me of what they did with Lights Out. Lights Out was a short horror, and then they made it into a feature-length film, and that was actually a really good horror movie. I like that movie. So that's the premise. Something that they are very overt about is tackling stereotypical stuff. Stereotypical tropes in horror, or stereotypical stuff about Black people, stereotypical stuff about white people. The point is to laugh at it. It's not something that takes itself seriously. And by that, I mean, it's like, it sort of does, in that it's trying to tackle these humorous stereotypes, but it's trying to do it in such a way that it's sort of making an underlying statement, but in a humorous way that can make everybody laugh. It doesn't take itself seriously in the sense that, I'll try to explain what I'm talking about. There are things that are thrown out there, narratives that are thrown out there, like this and this, and throw out this and this, and racism. That's the whole foundation of this story. Not necessarily in the way you think, though, but that's the foundation of what's happening-ish. And I wrote down that it's at the core of the story, pro or con. And so in the beginning, when it was just so overt, I was just like, yeah, but there's so much more nuance to what you're trying to explain and talk about and all that. And then I was like, but they're not trying to have the answers to certain things, or they're not trying to delve into this really deep sort of nuanced way of thinking, or nuanced narrative, or nuanced explanations. They do go into the nuance of stuff, not on everything, but they do in general, but it's done with a more lighthearted tone and given to you in the vehicle of comedy. And so with comedy, it's something you're supposed to laugh at. there's humor there. It's not necessarily something that's trying to give you all the answers to these more complex problems and social commentary and stuff like that. So I think that's the type of mindset to understand when you watch something like this, because it really doesn't pull any punches. By that I mean it tackles, like I said, horror tropes, stereotypes, but not just like obvious stereotypes of like cultural stereotypes, not just obvious ones, but from within the group of these friends, because they each display stereotypes that they have about other Black people. And they're just all going at it. One of the things that they're supposed to do is they're supposed to sacrifice the one who's the, what was it? The one who's the blackest. I think it shows that in the trailer. And so then they all start trying to distance themselves from their blackness or something like that. It's like, oh, jeez. And this one guy says he voted for Trump. So then, of course, that makes all the rest of them hate him and want to kill him. And to me, it's like, it's so much deeper than those sorts of things, though. But that's not, the point is not necessarily to analyze things from these deeper perspectives, but sort of to attack all of these stereotypes and just laugh at them. And someone said that there are all these jokes about Black suffering in here, but that it's not trauma porn. It's just a horror comedy. One of the people involved said that it was a fusion of social commentary about race relations, but it's done from within the framework of a horror comedy. And one of the reviewers that I was reading a review, they were saying exactly what I started off talking about, basically, that it hits different for Black audiences, as there are many jokes specific to Black audiences, which is entirely true, but that it's something that anyone who likes horror comedy can enjoy, and I agree with that. There were many laughs throughout the entire story amongst the entire crowd, sometimes more than others, just because, like I said, just things that maybe not everybody understood. It takes these tropes and it gives them depth to an extent. By giving them depth, I mean with regard to the character, the guy who wrote this story, Dwayne Perkins, he played the character of like the gay sidekick. And so he delved into that trope of the gay sidekick in the story. He delved into that trope and he said, what was it? He said something like, oh shoot, I don't think I wrote it down. He said something about like kind of analyzing these tropes or demonstrating that these tropes are just human, like that they're human beings. In other words, tackling these sorts of horror tropes and humanizing them a little bit more instead of it just being, oh, that's just one of the tropes. Well, why? Why is it? And what is it about this tropey character that we can know a little bit more about and give a little bit more depth to that type of character? All of these characters in here, I felt were pretty well-rounded. Not well-rounded, that's not the right... all of these characters, I felt like they were each given really good screen time. They all felt like they were a very comfortable group of friends. One thing that I did notice in the beginning that kind of put this a bit in the con-ish territory was that, and I wrote it down too, in the beginning, and I don't know what order they filmed this in, because you know how movies are filmed in different, sometimes they'll film the ending of a movie first, which that's so weird to me. You would think it would make sense for the actors to film from start to finish, but I know that's very rarely done. But at the beginning of the movie, before things really get to going and you're introduced to all these different characters and their different personalities, and they have their little talking points that they throw at each other throughout the narrative of this whole thing, and their interactions, like in the beginning, their performances felt a bit clunky, like they weren't really comfortable with it. In the beginning, their performances came off as acting. not necessarily them just being this character. And the only thing I can kind of compare that to is like, let's say you're listening to an audiobook and the narrator sounds like they're reading a story to you as opposed to telling you a story. In the beginning, their performances felt like people that you were watching acting instead of being these characters. But as the story went on, it felt like they got more into the groove in their interactions with each other, and their performance on the, on the screen in the story felt more natural. It felt more organic to the situation. It felt much more comedic just because of all the stuff that the stuff that was going on and all the screaming that was happening and all the crazy decisions they were making and the dialogue and how they would be at each other's throats one second and then they'd be trying to survive and help each other the next. The interactions of the characters was really funny, and the way they would turn on each other, it reminded me of something. Oh, I know what it reminded me of. How quickly they would turn on each other reminded me a little bit of that comedy sketch, the Anwar Jabawi, the one about the killer, the serial killer or something. How quickly they would just turn on someone. That sort of thing would happen a lot in here. So it kind of made the people come across as a bit superficial, or how people when they're faced with really terrible situations or circumstances, how their true self will emerge. What else? I didn't really organize my notes in a pro or con. Like, there wasn't anything that jumped out at me overtly as, wow, this is an awful film. Hold on a minute. What was I saying before you came in here? I guess I should start wrapping this up. I've gone on and on long enough. Are you interested to watch this when it comes out on the big screen?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
Okay. There's a lot of screaming and crazy. Oh, I know what I was going to say. There was something. Turo, don't interrupt my flow. Let me finish. You're going to make me forget what I was going to say.
Don't worry.
I was saying that, I was looking at my notes. I was saying that I didn't have my notes in a pro or con category because my thoughts on this were so jumbled. I think that subsequent viewing of this will help me appreciate it more than I did on my initial viewing. Not that I didn't enjoy it. I think it's something that I needed to mull over. And what I was going to say is this was something that I almost put in the con territory. Maybe not really. I mean, so the baddie in here. I figured out who was behind what was going on pretty quickly. And that ties into what the people who worked on this were saying. The writer, Dwayne, he specifically said, I thought I wrote it down too. I can't find it in my notes. But he said something about how they subverted your expectation of what you thought was happening. Like, they put this little twist. So it's not your stereotypical thing that you might think was happening. I'm trying to be vague because I don't want to give you guys spoilers. I kind of intuitively figured that out, or for some reason I just knew. This was before I even saw him say anything like that, because I didn't hear him say that until I came home and I was watching stuff about it. I just intuitively knew that what was going to be revealed was not what you thought it was. I'm not exactly sure why I felt, maybe because this was a comedy, and maybe because of just the overall tone of them attacking these stereotypes. Maybe that's part of the whole thing. So I'm curious to know if whenever you guys see it, if you made the same prediction or the same guess that I did, if you figured out what was happening. Maybe they don't really try to hide it too much because, like I said, this is a comedy about horror tropes and stereotypes. So in a lot of ways, it makes sense that things ended up the way they did. Chibi. Sorry, it's okay, Chibi. Sounds like the worst has passed. So that's why me guessing what was happening, me accurately-ish guessing what was going on, is not necessarily a con. I think the reason I perceived it initially as something that could be a con is because my mindset was still in the horror aspect of it, and this is comedy. And so it's not going to necessarily follow the sort of framework that you expect from a well-written horror movie. So those are my muddled thoughts on that. I don't think I have anything else. I've gone over everything that I wrote down. When this hits theaters and you guys check it out, let me know what you think about it. I'm really curious to see how this is going to be received by audiences. I think audiences in general are going to enjoy it. I think critics will probably enjoy it. There's no official critic reviews out right now. I don't know if there's an actual embargo on these sorts of things. This movie was shown at some sort of festival like 7, 8, 9 months ago. So it's gotten out there. People have seen it. There are reviews about it. It finally has distribution now. And because of these advanced screenings that were held today, I'm guessing we're going to start to see more reviews on YouTube. The only other review that I could find on YouTube was from some guy that I think he saw it at the festival. I am going to check out the reviews of other people once they see this. And I would not mind rewatching this movie, especially like I think Arturo would like it. It's goofbally, it's slapsticky, and it's just the characters' interactions are pretty funny. And it was a lot of fun to be able to watch this and to laugh so hard at some of the things that were happening. Anyway, yeah, that's Chitty. Come on, it's okay, baby. That's all I have for this one. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I'll see you guys later. Bye. It's okay, baby. Okay?